Ugh.
Hello and welcome to the Alchemist Inkwell.
This is your spiritual podcast for grounded people. And there's a reason I'm pointing at you right now if you're watching the video, because it's a week where we are not feeling grounded. So we're going to try to give you something to ground with. Yes.
Right? Raise your hand if you don't feel the ground.
This is your spiritual podcast for grounded people. We promise. And it will
Oh
be
God.
so. Um, because the world is weird. And the world, oh, by the way, this is Emily and I'm
Hi.
KristaLyn. And the world is
Hello.
weird, and we acknowledge that. And so this is a bookend episode, which is great. But we're also going to be weaving in some just ways to find your peace this week and always when it comes to spirituality.
Yeah. We mentioned this before, but we had planned to do a mental health and spirituality episode a couple episodes ago. But then the world got weird and life happened, and that's okay. Welcome back, Krista.
Mhm.
Um, stuff just got kind of funky. So we are circling back around to kind of do that mental health and spirituality episode. The other thing that I just want to say at the start of this episode, we are recording this before Election Day.
Yeah.
So we are recording this the Monday before Election Day, so the 4th. We do not know yet what has happened. When you're listening to it, you will know what has
Mhm.
happened. Um, for us, we're still sitting in that, anxious spot, which I'm sure we're all going to be feeling this when this goes live too. I just want to preface that. So anything that we say, if you're now listening to this within the context of understanding whatever happened with the election, that's not what we're not speaking from the same point as you. So I
Mhm.
don't want anything to accidentally come across as like insensitive or like it didn't, like what the heck? What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Because we're time where you're in time.
Yeah.
And that's
That's
an
next week's
important bit of
episode.
context. Yeah. It's next week's episode, which we will be discussing for sure.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, the spiritual implications. On that note, um, we understand that it has been a rough couple weeks.
Mhm.
Uh, super rough. Um, Depending on where you are in the world, depending upon what's going on with you, it's been rougher than others. But there's a lot of energy going on. There's a lot of funky stuff. There is a lot of up leveling things,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of kick in the faces. I do want to say that it's come up with me a lot lately. Of people have been like, okay, well, I'm manifesting this thing, but everything seems to be going wrong. I'm like, well, then you're manifesting correctly, which sounds counterintuitive. But when
Mhm.
you ask for something, when you manifest for something, that's when you're like, hey, I'm ready. I want this thing. The universe is like, well, let me get you ready. Actually, then let's move aside these things. Let's crumble that down. Let's shove these blocks out of place. Like, let's do all the things you actually need in order to get to the thing that you're requesting from the universe. And oftentimes it means that your life feels a bit shambly, a bit shambly.
Thanks, Malcolm.
Oh, Malcolm. I don't know if you're listening. I doubt you are, but we love you.
I miss you.
Um, you
Oh,
know.
what I would give to be in Greece this week. Yeah. No,
Right?
but that's a really excellent point. It's manifesting is very Saturn returny. You just
It
get
is.
you just get used to it. And I think not to say that, it just gets hard and you get stronger, which in some cases it does, but you also adapt to the way things are and you start
Hmm.
learning the rules enough to play your own game.
Yeah.
And I really truly believe that in our lives, when we are manifesting things in a context of also being a member of a collective society where a lot
Yeah.
has to change for things to fall into place, because you're not just manifesting it for you, you're manifesting for your whole life, which affects other people. And it may not
Hmm.
even be people that you see or ever encounter. And the people who are required in order for those things that you're manifesting to come to you. You may never see or
Hmm.
encounter, but actions have to be taken by other people. It's just like, like the shirt you're wearing. Somebody
Yeah.
made that. You may never see them, you may never encounter them, but there was someone involved. And that
Hmm.
person was vital to the process of that shirt making its way to you. The same thing goes for manifesting. So yes, things may be going wrong. Yes, things may be moving around and the pieces may be falling into place, which may not be as direct as we expect or hope for, but the pieces are moving into place. And that is a
Hmm.
sign that work is happening. So that's always nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a nice way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, let's talk about spiritual psychosis. Look at that
Yeah,
segue. Look
that
at
is
that
perfect.
beautiful segue. The reason I bring it up so directly, to
Mhm.
be totally honest, because hopefully you guys are not feeling in any way spiritual psychosis in the slightest. However, you're probably witnessing it in one or more people, either in your personal life or online. I can pretty much guarantee that, especially since both the eclipse season and the timeline smush, which is what I keep
Mhm.
calling it, it's the official term now, I decided, that occurred in
It's
the
perfect.
middle of
Yeah.
eclipse season. A lot of spiritual psychosis has amped up. There's a couple different reasons for this. One of the main reasons is the fact that people are feeling very untethered. They're feeling very floaty. They're very feeling ungrounded. Nothing feels super normal or super comfortable. So falling very heavily into something that helps them feel more power or more importance, or like they're the one that's got it figured out, or even more fear, which I know sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes fear is very comfortable for people who don't want to look at stuff that's going on in their real normal lives.
Yeah.
That's what's been happening. And I do also just want to say, especially because we're sitting here in the podcast space, where probably most of you are probably thinking of spiritual psychosis, people who think, that the aliens are coming to get them, whatever, from like a spiritual our side perspective. Like, yes, that is what we talk about. However, it can happen in any spiritual belief system,
Hmm.
any of them. We are witnessing more spiritual psychosis right now with Christian nationalism than we are with literally anything else. So
Yep.
even though the easiest thing to think of a lot of the time is like the super weird, I'm possessed by a demon and sleeping with Loki level people that we might see that we're like, ooh, this is unhealthy. Yes, that is, but it's more happening on a Christian national level at like a huge rate.
Yes.
Huge
Yeah.
rate. Mm-hmm.
And examples of that from someone who grew up in it and honestly experienced it firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody is talking about the end times,
Yeah, straight
that
up.
is your first clue. And listen, I am the kid who grew up memorizing Revelations and reading all of the spin-offs of the Left Behind books. I know what this was like firsthand, and I have grace for those people. And I know that you can come out of it. But right now, and especially honestly, I've been seeing a massive uptick in it since before the pandemic, since 2016. I was just talking about this with Dan the other day. Like that really did set something off.
Yeah, I did.
And it started it I can't even say it started slowly. It didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was a
Mm-mm.
hard pivot. And if you didn't know that it was a hard pivot, you could have missed it. Like if you were within it and then had to work your way out,
Yeah.
that is something that may have seemed like, whoa, when did that happen? But it was a hard pivot around that time. I watched it happen within my own circles at that time where I was living, and then had to negotiate my way into different places that did feel safer, and then come out of the bubble to see things from different perspectives, thanks to people who were outside of the bubble already. There's that metaphor about the cave where, if you've been in the cave your whole life, having to explain what the world looks like outside of the cave when people won't turn around to look at it
Mm-hmm.
is a thing. It's real. That it is how that happens. Um, and there are a lot of people who are really excited about how echoey that cave is. And they don't
Yeah.
ever want to come out because it makes them feel validated in feelings that they have nowhere else to put them. One of
Mm-hmm.
the biggest things, and I want to say this, is a lot of people are feeling anger. They have nowhere to associate it with because they'd have to turn inward. They'd have to change themselves. They'd have to adjust their own lives or face fears that are associated with that anger. And instead, they would rather find an outlet for it given to them by someone else that gives them a group mentality so that they feel like it's okay to be angry and they are allowed to yell, which they are in a healthy way, but they don't want to do the work to find the healthy ways. So
Mm-hmm.
if you are seeing that, that is what we're talking about. That is the version and what it looks like in this context with the Christian nationalism right now.
Yeah. And in the spiritual, like, woo-woo sort of sense, the way
Mhm.
that it tends to show up is if you're feeling like there's beings that are controlling your life, not guiding you, not helping you, controlling your life, take a break.
Mhm.
Take a break. Turn off spiritual stuff for a while. I mean it, like straight up. There's no requirement to be spiritual. We're just
Mhm.
gonna start there. Like this is not a required thing. And if at any point it stops being something that helps and benefits your life and starts being something that harms your life, stop.
Yep.
Please. please stop. It is not because we don't want you to be spiritually connected. It's not because you don't want, you to have these connections with your guides, etc. It's because you have to be a safe human in order to be a safe spiritual being. That's just how it works, hand in hand. And especially with some of the stuff we talk about, it can get extremely, extremely woo-woo. It can get very quantum physics. It can get very esoteric. It can get very existential really, really quickly. And if you're not in a space to handle those things, or those things start to feel very overwhelming or scary, or you feel like you're now out of control in some way, you can turn that off. You also can get additional help, mental health help. Please go to a therapist, psychologist,
Mhm.
psychiatrist, whoever it is that you feel comfortable with. There are wonderful ones out there that will understand spirituality. I know I have a lot of therapist clients,
Yeah.
so many therapist clients. Um, but also you need that actual support, and you can turn off spiritual stuff, set it aside, do not do it for a while. You remember, you have the ability, you are spookier and scarier than anything that could come at you. You have the ability to protect your space, 100%. You have the ability to tell beings in the universe no. There is no being out there that is stronger than you here in physical. Like, remember that, because
Yep.
you have the physical connection and they don't. And that has power and weight. So, anything, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like, oh, well, stuff starts feeling scary or dangerous, you can handle putting the blocks up. You can turn it off and come back to it later when you feel more aligned. That is okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Emphasis on the it doesn't have to be forever. If you
No.
I've taken a break so many times, and I
Mm-hmm.
honestly consider my breaks part of my spiritual process.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm not okay with the creator energy that I connect to. And that could be source, that could be God, that could be whatever you
Yeah.
connect to. I say creator
Oh yeah.
energy because it works for you. I have had moments where I'm like, I know you exist, but we're not cool right now because I
Mhm.
need to process my feelings. I don't understand where you're coming from on this. Honestly, I feel like you're being a little much and a bit of a brat. And and I know that's a
Jeez,
mean
God,
thing.
shut up.
I know. And I've been there multiple times in my life. And I think the ability and the permission to say, hey, I need to human for a while is perfect. And if you are someone who's coming from a Christian background and is like, oh no, you have to always be, even Jesus thought God forsook him. Even Jesus took 40 days and went and humaned for a bit before going to do the bigger things that Jesus did later on in the story. It is there. The permission is there if you want it in the text. We are not told about it very
Yeah.
often in our dialogues, but the dialogues and the texts are two different things. So if you are looking for permission, whatever path you are on, whatever belief system you have, the truest version of it has it in there
Hmm.
for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's allowed to have, you're allowed to have ebbs and flows
Mhm.
with all of this. Like, the ebbs are just as valuable.
Mhm.
If it was just flow, that's just a perpetually rising tide until the world is covered in water, and that's not what we're going for. Like, you
Yeah.
want the ebbs and flows. That's how it works. So if there's times when you're not feeling very connected, or there's times when you need to disconnect, that's fine. That's
Yeah.
so
Yeah. There are magical texts that actually have protection spells against people who are not in a mentally fit state to handle them. In them.
Mhm.
Picatrix actually asks whatever being that created the universe is to forgive them for anybody who picks this book up and it's in the wrong hands. Even though they
Yeah.
wrote it and they meant it for a good audience and for the responsible people, they're like, basically, God forgive me for all the wrong people that happen to find this book. Um,
Hmm.
Ficino tells you how to have a magical lifestyle and like breaks your day down hour by hour. God bless Ficino and that Aquarius rising. Um, but breaks your day down hour by hour and then says, keep good friends around you. If they are good friends and they help make you a better person, they stay. If they are not, if they make you feel less and sad and whatever, they go. And also talks about how being being studious can lead to depression. And so you have to make sure you get out in the sunlight a little bit. Literally, Pacino tells you to go touch grass on occasion because you need to make sure that you don't get into a depressed mental state, which is going to
Yeah.
inhibit your magic.
Now, with all of that, we know right now everyone's mental health is not great.
Mhm.
Like,
That's okay.
And that's fine. Like,
Mhm.
chances are good you're having some type of mental health something come up right now. There's a million different reasons for that. There's human reasons and there's spiritual reasons. There's a whole bunch going on, and we acknowledge that. So that's the other reason why we just are going to say this again. We've said this so many times, and you guys probably, as our listeners, are like, yeah, we've heard it, but we're saying it again. Spirituality is not a replacement for mental health.
They go
It
together.
is not. You have to have both. One takes care of your physical being, one takes care of your spiritual being. Those are two different consciousnesses that need to learn how to work together.
Mhm.
They are both necessary and important. Specifically and recently, with the experiences that we've had, we had some interesting in person experiences with some people that, despite how many times we've said that, despite having a full therapist do an entire keynote speech at Sacred Spaces about the importance of mental health and how to balance spirituality and mental health, which was phenomenal, by the way. Um, so good. Despite all of that, unfortunately, people were still like, well, I don't need mental health help. I have spirituality. Please don't do that to yourself.
Mhm.
I mean, you and I have been doing this for a long time,
Yeah.
combined like over 40 years. We did the math the other day, which is older than both of us. But
Yeah.
like combined, we really have. Like I've been, I mean, psychic forever, but actively doing readings and connecting with people since I was like 15.
Yeah.
I can tell you, as someone who has done this for a long time, it is in no way a replacement for mental health stuff. It can help. They hold hands, but it is not a replacement, and you still need the support. You
Yeah.
have to have it's just so essential. It's essential to being a person. It's really essential to being a person right now. And I understand a lot of times there's not a lot of free resources and you might be in a hard spot to like find mental health help. There is some though out there. There are people that will work with that. There are hotline numbers. There are all sorts of different things that can help you with mental health. It doesn't necessarily cost an arm and a leg. Of course, there's some insurance options. There's a ton of different things, but I just want you to know that mental health help is becoming more and more increasingly accessible. Please, even just listening to podcasts from
Or
therapists will
books.
help. Like
Yeah.
just anything, read books, anything that is from the other side, the physical side, to
Mm.
complement the spiritual side. It's so important. It's
Yeah.
just so important.
Podcasts and books were crucial to me when I didn't have access to therapy.
Yeah.
So I can definitely say that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like even free courses out there from really wonderful therapists too that have made like a, free like what is your system of nerves? Your
Mhm.
nervous system. There we go.
Yeah.
Uh nervous system regulation courses and things like
Mhm.
that. There's so many exercises, there's YouTube, there's so many free resources that do exist. It's of course not a replacement for therapy, and we're not saying that it is. It's not a replacement for medication. We're not saying that it is. And oh, on that note, really quick, if you take medication, that doesn't mean you can't be spiritual either. I've had that come up a lot lately for some reason,
Yeah.
where people are like, well, I take antidepressants, so I have a hard time channeling. I'm like, no, you should be. Yeah, that's good. That's okay. Like,
Yeah.
medicine does not in any way inhibit your ability to channel. Like,
And neither
that's
does
not it.
therapy. Yeah. I've
And
had
neither
people
does
say, like,
therapy.
if I go to therapy, it means I don't have faith. And I'm like, therapy is the only reason I can keep my faith some days. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I was saying that this morning because right now I'm using folk magic in combination with medicine from a doctor to recover from my top surgery. And it has been very successful. I think both of them are doing their jobs.
Yeah.
And it's very important to do both. I also have mental health support through this entire process. A nutritionist, I'm very lucky to have access to healthcare now. I was more than 10 years without it. So I am gobbling it up at this point. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm using all of the resources I can for a holistic experience.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly like
Yeah.
there's so many different layers. And that also goes like there's tools to help with mental health too that come up with a plan. Like the next
Mhm.
couple months, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. They're going to be hard as fuck.
Yeah.
I don't care how the election comes out. I don't care what's happening one way or the other. They're going to be hard.
Yeah.
It just is, unfortunately, especially because a lot of the doesn't mean that bad things are all going to happen. It's going to be cacophony
Mhm.
horrific, but there's a lot of energy of self-reflection. There's a lot of energy of transformation. There's a lot of energy of purge. There's a lot of energy of change. That is inherently a difficult thing. So having a plan and creating a plan right now on how you're going to navigate that is super important. We're warning you as psychics
Yeah.
that the energy is going to be challenging over the next couple months.
Yeah. It's going to be challenging. And also, like, if I have to listen to another social media person be like, I checked with the astrology people and they say it's all going to get better. And I'm thinking, like, no, we came here for a time of change. We are in a foundational building phase of a whole new 200-year cycle of culture and
Mm-hmm.
progress. So does that mean it's going to be a nightmare? No. But does that mean that there is some work to do and it's not going to be rainbow and butterflies in 6 months if you just hold your breath and count to 10? You came here to do the work. Like, part of me is excited that there's work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Another part of me is validly scared of what that work might look like. And so I'm bringing both of these together, and I really want to be transparent about this. I'm scared, like, for election reasons, and I will be,
Mm-hmm.
open about that. I don't want people to be like, oh my God, the next years of astrology are terrifying. They are years, first of all. They have a lot in them. That's
Mm-hmm.
365 days of people making choices that have a lot going on. And so there are some years where we are setting new standards. We are building new foundations. And some astrologers are taking it to a degree where they're like terrified of it. Some astrologers are ignoring it and bypassing it. I'm in the middle of knowing that we're going to take it year by year. I looked at next
Mm-hmm.
year already, and it's like, honestly, I'm happy with next year. So next year seems like part of the building phase that we get to do a little bit of a breather, and then we go to work again. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that you have to be terrified. One of my favorite things that I have found in life is that anxiety is being afraid of what I can't yet control. Shame is,
Mm-hmm.
being upset about what happened already that I still can't control because it already happened. But when I am in the moment, I am in control. And you will be in these moments. So you will be in control and you can prepare for them in ways that make you feel empowered. And so, yeah, are there going to be hard years? Yes, because we're going to be, a human society living on planet. So there have been hard years before. We had 2020, and that's been a hard year. There have been seriously hard years that, our humanity has lived through and dealt with. There are occasions that we rise to. And then there are also really great things that happen in those times and around those times. So I just want
Mm-hmm.
people to say, like you always do, Em, change is the only constant. Making things happen, growing things, building this society that we get to be a part of the foundation of is going to take some effort. We're not
Yeah.
in utopia. And
No.
I'm okay with that. I once had a spiritual person who is very well known say that heaven to them is going to be like that heaven promises to be 100% like just constant ecstasy. And they said, some people ask how that can be, but I have no problem with that. And I'm like, I do. It sounds really boring. So,
Ew.
yeah, I mean, like,
I
do I
don't
want
like it at all.
I don't like it at all either. I'm like, give me at least a project. Um, but here we have them. And sometimes the projects make us nervous, and sometimes the projects make us thrilled, and sometimes the projects feel a little bit boring because there's not a whole lot going on that we have to partake in at that time. Life is going to go on, and we are going to rise to whatever occasion we have to rise to when it comes our time to take action. And I believe in every single one of you who is listening and watching this. And we're going to be here for it. We're going to be here the whole time. When actual things do come
Yeah.
up, we will be here to say, hey, this is coming up right now. We're all feeling it, like next week's episode likely will be.
Yeah.
Here's the results of what happened, this big thing that you probably have feelings about. Here's how to navigate those feelings. When we
Mm-hmm.
actually know what we're dealing with, we will deal with that too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I do also want to just kind of touch on that notion with the guy talking about like, oh, heaven's gonna be all this ecstasy.
Mhm.
Please, please, please vet the people you listen to
Yeah.
in the next couple, especially months, but years in
Yeah.
general. Because a lot of people are saying things like that. And unfortunately, for people who are not in a good mental health space, that can very easily push them towards really, really scary self-harm behaviors that can really push them towards, oh, well, if it's all I see all the time, I'm just going to go, or those types of things. Like
Mhm.
it's very much into not good spaces. That's not how the world works. That's not how the universe works. That's not how spirituality works.
Mhm.
Um, so please be careful who you're listening to. There's a couple really big spiritual creators that have come across my feed lately, and I've been like, ew, what are we doing? Why do you have more followers than me? Like, oh my God, this is scary. And like, not in like a jealousy way, but just being like, oh no, like this is
Yeah.
not good. Um, there's just a couple people that are doing it more for their ego than anything else. So if you feel very much like this is for their ego and they're
Mhm.
telling things, they teach in order to flatter themselves, or they bring up
Yeah.
stuff in order to flatter themselves, just be hesitant to engage with that. If that makes you uncomfortable, that's listen to your gut, please.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that too, if they start getting really love and light with stuff, I would also be really hesitant with that. Um,
Hmm.
that tends to be a very slippery slope towards some psychosis stuff for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So just a little hesitant of that. This is just one random prediction that I've had. We're gonna see a lot. We're already starting to see it, but we're gonna see a lot of new cults in the next
Hmm.
couple years. A lot of new cults because there's obviously one real big cult occurring in the
Hmm.
country, and that is already going to spin off into other little cults, but
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of different kind of cult stuff because people really want to feel safe in part of a group. So that's
Hmm.
the other reason I'm like, hey, just please watch who you're listening to as far as spiritual stuff goes. Like, please do your own independent research on them, or sit with you if they share a topic. Don't immediately get super hyped about it until you like sit there and think about it for a second and be like, huh, does that actually vibe with me or does that not?
Hmm.
um that is a wonder, and that if that's me, fantastic. If that's Krista, great. That's that. Like, you do not need to just trust everything that we say blind. Like, if it doesn't feel aligned with you, that is fucking fine. We love that for you. Please find
Hmm.
your own aligned spiritual path. It's amazing. We're just here to help hold your hand throughout that process and hopefully give you things and tools to help you figure that out for yourself. Like, that's always our goal. It is never, ever, ever to be like, this is 100% how everything is.
No,
Accept it. And if you don't, then you're wrong. Like, never,
we are
ever will
resource.
that happen with us.
We are a resource of research for you. And that is the idea. You are the one who makes your decisions. And
Hmm.
if your decisions feel like what we say kind of contributes to them in a beneficial way, in an expansive way, cool. Then that makes us compatible friends. And I love
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
But yeah, take Ficino's advice and know yourself, and then
Hmm.
know who is compatible with you, and who makes you feel better, and who makes you feel supported, and all of those things,
Hmm.
because you deserve it and you can find it. You can.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is my number one recommendation. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if what's happened over the last couple days that we're not in yet just yet, but you are in,
I know.
has been too much, take it to the trees. I
Hmm.
mean that with my whole body.
Yeah.
If anything is hard, take it to the trees. That is like the best mental health tip I can give anybody ever. If you're
Yeah.
struggling with something, go take it to nature. And I'm like, that might sound very like, oh, sure, that's not going to fix anything. I promise it will. Please go hug a tree, go sit with a
Mhm.
tree, go be outside on the grass. If it's freezing cold and in the snow, go play in the snow. Like, I mean it. Like,
Mhm.
just go be outside,
Yeah.
go be in nature, take the problems to the trees for 10 minutes, and it
Yeah.
will genuinely help improve. We are so disconnected from nature, and it gets more disconnected when we get into our heads, and all the stuff going on in the world really gets to us. Reconnect. It
Mhm.
helps. It helps so much.
Yeah. I think, and that's perfectly said. And the reason why it's so accurate is because we as humanity get so wrapped up in being humanity as if that's the end
Hmm.
all be all. But we are not the only inhabitants of this planet. And we are not the only story that is going on. And so
Hmm.
taking it, I have a tree everywhere I go. I think I've said this before. I always have a tree. And my tree is right outside the window here. Whenever I am having a meltdown, whenever I am overwhelmed or overstimulated, I go to a tree. The tree helps ground me. Sometimes I talk to the tree, sometimes it talks back. And it's
Hmm.
important to remember that, like, the trees have energy to them. If anything knows what it's like to be grounded, it's a tree. I would
Yeah.
say even more than a rock. I don't know
Oh
why.
yeah.
Trees, just because they continue to earth, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but they are the number one thing for grounding. And
Hmm.
we already are at almost time. Cheapers.
We are. We are definitely at almost time. Well, thank you guys so much. Let's real quick run through our bookends, shall
Yeah,
we?
yeah, yeah,
Okay. I had a decent reading month. Um, Only one DNF, which was nice,
yeah,
but some good books. Shall I start? Are you good with that?
yeah. Go for it.
All right, let's see. I kicked it off. I guess I kicked it off finishing The Ruthless Lady's Guide to Wizardry by C.M. Wagner.
Yeah.
That was it was a fun adventure. It was Was the story the most interesting story I've ever read? No. Was it super duper fleshed out and like really complicated and whatever? No. However, the style in which it was written was just incredibly pleasant and fun and easy to read. I highly recommend listening to it as an audiobook too, because the narrator reads it how it's written, that you might not have that same cadence in your head, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun fake words that they use, but that make a lot of sense for actually what they're saying. Lots of made up words. It's just a really fun vibe. It's kind of dark, but it's really fun. Highly recommend it, if especially if you just need something fun and playful, like palate cleanser. It's just
Hmm.
hey, it's super fun. Then I read the One Dark Window duology by Rachel Gillig. And I kind of, it's something I've seen on TikTok a lot, and I am so hesitant to read TikTok books. And I was like, oh God, is it going to be bad? It wasn't. It was really good. It's dark. Like energetic wise and kind of
Hmm.
thematically. However, it has a really cool card-based magic system. It's a duology. Both books are out. It's is complete. And the cards is basically kind of like an oracle card, but there's only a set amount that have been made. And if you hold the card, you can tap it and use the power associated with the card. So obviously there's a lot of like war stuff and thieving and dynamics for people trying to get the card, and it kind of centers around someone, and there's a curse, a blood, like a curse on, if you get cursed with magic stuff, it's like not good and people are dying. And so there's like a whole, it's really complicated and really cool. But it's fun. It has really cool magic. I liked it a lot. I read it so fast. It was a really quick read. It was a
Hmm.
really quick read. Then I read The Heartless Hunter, which is part of the Crimson Moth duology, by Kristen Cicerelli. That was also really fun. It is a the witch hunter type of energy. It's really political. There is romance. I had to Google at one point, like, is this going to be a love triangle? Because are you fucking kidding me? I won't read
Yeah.
this. It's not. It kind of is, but not really. Um, it's pretty cool. I read it because I thought the duology was out. It's not. The second book doesn't come out till January, and I was really upset. I
Sorry,
was
I'm
really
learning to
upset
laugh
about
from my stomach for these days. So.
it. Yeah, you're totally good. I was really not pleased with that result. Then I tried to read The Absinthe Underground. And I thought it'd be totally a vibe because it's about like a club that's run by fairies and it's an absinthe bar. And I thought that was going to be totally my vibe. And it's queer, which I love. My
Mm.
problem is I got to 37% of the way through the book and nothing had really happened. And the main characters did this thing that it's just a pet peeve for mine in books,
Oh no.
where anything that happened, they would be like, why is this happening? What, like they're telling the reader what to think. You can't just trust that
Hmm.
from the context the reader is going to understand, like have these questions. The
Yeah.
main characters had to ask them either aloud or in their internal dialogue repeatedly every single chapter to like tell the reader what to think. And I so very much, so very much. Now I'm reading This Will Be Fun by E.B. Asher. I am only like 30% through it. However, it is very fun.
Hmm.
It reminds me of Ella Enchanted the movie or Shrek. That's the best way I can describe it.
Okay. Yeah. Love that.
And but the main characters are all in there, like are all 30, 32, something in that zone. They saved the world 10 years ago and it wrecked their whole lives. So now you're catching up with them um, post that. And they're like, Saturn return, just got through it. One of
Yeah.
them's going through the divorce. Like it's like all these different things, and it's pretty fun. So
Love that.
it was a good reading month.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Um, I finished Inanna by Emily Wilson, which was
Mm,
very, narrative. It is Inanna, the story
yeah.
of Inanna, which was cool to hear more than just the version that I get to hear because of Venus retrograde of Inanna going into the underground. So
Yeah.
that was interesting. Definitely recommend reading it if you want to get into Sumerian mythology.
Mm.
We read Sigil Witchery in my book club, so we all learned how to do sigils. Behind me is one that one of my students made for me for my surgery, which is really cool. Thank you, Danny. And then I read two Brandon Sanderson books, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and now I'm currently reading Tress and the Emerald Sea. Both are, of course, brilliantly written and make me feel like a better writer every time I read Brandon Sanderson. But also, like, my favorite thing about Yumi and the Nightmare Painter is the cover. It's gorgeous. So I might have to
So
get that
pretty.
for my shelf.
It's
Mostly, yeah.
right there
Yeah,
in mine.
it's just super pretty. So
Hmm.
obviously recommend those. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I just started
Amazing.
Trust today, so we'll see how that goes, but I have high expectations.
I love Tress. I
Yeah.
love it so much. It's one of my favorites of him.
Hmm.
So, I mean, my all-time favorite is always gonna be Mistborn and that
Yeah.
trilogy in general. But I really love Tress.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you all so
Cool.
much for being a part of this. We are sending you all the good vibes for
Mhm.
however this week has shaken out. We will talk about it on the next podcast. However, we do hope that you stay grounded and that you, 1, 2, 3, go
Go
make some
make some
magic.
magic is perfect on my end. So I'm here for it.